Shrimp scampi is what we're making here today with pasta or bread or whatever you choose to serve it with. Traditionally, shrimp scampi is just made as it is. It's not always necessarily to go with pasta, although that's how we usually serve it here in American restaurants, but it can just be eaten on its own. If you don't eat seafood or shrimp in particular, then this method is great with chicken breast or boneless, skinless chicken thigh, like a chopped up chicken meat would be really great. It's also delicious. My favorite veggie combo with this would be zucchini and yellow squash and mushrooms. Good like medley of mushrooms, but especially the dark brown ones, cremini, and maybe some nice shiitake mushrooms for some good umami flavor. And then with the same combination of lemon, garlic, and parsley, which is the traditional scampi, with that little kick of crushed red pepper. That is it. Our basic ingredients tonight are all kind of sitting right here. I think you can kind of see that. Got extra virgin olive oil, dry white wine, which if that means anything to anyone, I don't drink wine. Pinot Grigio is what I'm working with because that's what I've got in this adorable little bottle. If alcohol is an issue for you or anyone in your family to cook or eat with, then like a veggie stock or a chicken stock or a seafood stock, if you happen to have that, would be fantastic. You can get any of those on the shelf at the store. It's just to add in extra flavor and liquid and a deglazing process when we saute. So if you've been in classes with me before, you know what deglazing is. If not, we will definitely get to that tonight. I've got fresh lemon. You definitely want it to be fresh if you can, although they do sell fresh squeezed lemon juice, not from concentrate. You just have to keep it in your refrigerator. It's good. If all you have is the bottle of concentrate lemon juice, then you should still make this dish. It'll be good. But fresh is the best because then you can also use some of the zest for a garnish, which is what I'm going to do tonight. Garlic, fresh garlic all the way for this dish. It's really important that it's fresh. Garlic powder wouldn't really work because creating the sauteed garlic in the combination of olive oil and butter is what it's all about. That's basically what this whole dish is. So I've got that. I've got some parsley here, salt and pepper, butter, and my shrimp. My shrimp I have already rinsed and peeled. It came from the store deveined, although you always need to double check your shrimp, whether you get it fresh or frozen. If it says on the package that it's been deveined, that's fantastic. It saves you a lot of time and trouble, but there's always going to be one or two that they miss or that didn't quite come out all the way. And that vein, which is a really lovely way of referring to it, is not actually a bloodline. It's part of the digestive system. If you know what I'm saying. So you want to get that out. You don't want to eat that part of the shrimp at all. So it runs along the back side here, and it's usually on a deveined shrimp. It's already been split there where you can see there's no dark line here. If there were still like a dark line in between that opening on the back side of the shrimp, then you want to just use your fingers or get a little fork or a toothpick and just kind of pull it out. Tweezers, if you have it, would be great. Make sure though that it has been peeled and deveined. If you eat the shrimp tails, I know people do that. You can definitely leave those on and just chow down on this dish. It changes the texture of it, but it actually gives you a lot more of the calcium. I hope Amy would be proud of me for throwing that in there. But that's definitely a personal thing. It's not traditional in scampi to have the hard tails on in the dish necessarily, unless you're just eating it by itself, at which point you leave the tails on to like pick it up and eat it with, which is perfectly fine. But for ease of service, I am not going to have the tails on mine. Let me take this cord out of here. Oh no, it was holding the phone up. Hold on. I think that, there we go. Again, leaving the tails on is definitely personal, but I have gone completely shell-free, tail off, deveined, very important with the shrimp. I'm using, this was a 20, I think it's the 2730, like you want the largest shrimp that you can get, either large or jumbo, the extra large shrimp to, it has a lot of different words, but the numbers mean more than anything. It usually has like a 21, 24 with a slash in between. That tells you how many pieces of shrimp per pound. So the smaller the number, if it's like a 21, 24, that means there's only 21 shrimp per pound. They're pretty big. If you're getting the 42 to 47 or whatever, that there's a high range of in the 40s of shrimp. They're very small because you get a lot more per pound. So that's how you can tell size of shrimp. So this is in the smaller numbers, bigger shrimp category. Again, if you can find something at the seafood counter or the shop that you like, or in the freezer section, they have been flash frozen and frozen very early on in their harvesting, so frozen is fine. It's just the smaller they are, the faster they're going to cook, and you're going to have a really overdone shrimp because it just goes so quickly with really, really small shrimp. Like if you get those bay shrimp, those are not meant for sauteing. So when you're going to do a saute job on a high heat in a pan, even if it's only for a few minutes, the bigger the shrimp, the more likely it is you're not going to overcook them and turn them into that kind of rubber band texture, which turns a lot of people off of different kind of seafood and shellfish. It's common. It happens all the time with calamari. You can overcook that very quickly. I have a kind of pasta already cooked off. It's this fun little spirally long pasta that I got from Italy long ago. Any kind of pasta will work. Traditionally, it's with like a long pasta like linguine or spaghetti, or Alfredo would work. Angel hair, you just be really careful not to overcook it because it can turn gummy. It's so very fine. You know, you want to be careful. And if you're using a short pasta, that's perfectly fine. It just becomes, you have to then kind of cut the shrimp to match your pasta to bite size as you're eating it, which is fine. Doesn't matter. Whole wheat is the best. We know because of nutrition. A lot of the things we learned through this quarter, any chance you can to have a whole grain rather than a refined processed grain is a better option. There's also lots of alternative pastas, which are great. So it doesn't really matter. You can have gluten-free bread. I would recommend a French bread or like a really crusty baguette to go with this. And just tear it up and use it to kind of eat up the sauce as you eat the shrimp. That is a delicious alternative to pasta. And then you can also choose like a whole grain or seeded loaf or a flavor that you really like, something with garlic and rosemary in it. Maybe that would go really, really well, up that garlic even more. Just keep the gum handy, I guess. So that's it. That's the whole lay of the land here. We have a couple things to prep. I want to chop up some garlic, and then I want to chop the parsley so that it's ready, because that's going to get tossed in at the very end, along with the lemon juice. I want to get my lemon zest done because at the end I don't want to be worrying about getting my garnish done. So we're going to get all of our mise en place ready right now, get all of our food in its place, and then once we start sauteing, just like a lot of our other fun dishes we've made, we just cook and then we're done. It's going to be a very quick one tonight. So like I said, if there's any questions you've been thinking of or wanting to talk about, think of them now. And then when we are done cooking, well, we can have a little chat session. So make sure that this is still off. Yep, okay. We're going to do lemon zest for garnish, and I'm going to use an actual zester, not a microplane zester this time. This long, fun, razor sharp thing that creates those beautiful strings of zest. I'm going to zest the lemon first because after that I need to juice it. If I waited until after it was juiced, it would be very annoying and difficult to try to get nice, beautiful zest. So you always try to think about what you need first and in what order. I'm going to zest this first, and that just, you hold the zester with pressure along the side and keep scraping it along the edge of the lemon. You don't want to go over the same lines twice, because the deeper you go into the peel, the more of that white pith you get, and that is not a very good flavor, the inner white part of the lemon peel. It's very bitter. You just drag your zester. If you don't have one of these, you can use the very small holes on a box grater. You can try to use that. They'll come out a little bit thicker, but that's all right. You can also use a vegetable peeler just any regular peeler, and peel one small section of the peel. And then you can use your knife to just finely chop that up, and then you get pretty zest that way too, like this. So you can kind of make nice little strings that way, add that in. So I've got my nice lemon zest. I'm just going to set that way to the side. That is going to happen at the very end. But I wanted to get that done because now I'm going to cut this lemon, and I'm going to use a juicer when it comes time to squeeze it into the the scampi as it's cooking. So you wanted to do that before you cut the lemon. That's the trick on that. I want to chop up a little bit of parsley. I'm doing half the recipe. It's just me, as usual. If you're cooking for 4 or more, you would definitely need the amount of parsley that it calls for, 1/4 of a cup. It seems like a lot. It is, but it is a very, very important flavor and ingredient in scampi. It's one of the base flavor components, and without as much as it calls for, you're going to be really missing a lot of that flavor profile. So to chop herbs, I bring it into a very, very small bunch. It doesn't matter if you're going to kind of squeeze them together. You bring your leaves into a really tight little bunch right in the middle, and then you just bring your knife through that, keeping the tip of the knife on the board, bringing it back every time into a small bunch until you can just kind of chop, 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 chop. Always trying to keep your hand where you know it's not going to get cut, which this time is on top of the knife. I see that there is something in the chat box without Amy here. I'm going to leave the chat box open so that I can see it. Is dry parsley okay? Yeah, it's got more of a condensed flavor. So you would use a little bit less in that case, and you might, when you add it in, you might want to add it in a little bit earlier in the process, just because then it has more time to rehydrate and not be like you're eating dry parsley at the end of the process. But yeah, you definitely can use that if that is all you have. I don't have as much parsley as I would like. I'm going to show you. Some of my parsley has gone yellow already, but the stems of parsley are extremely usable, and they're packed with parsley flavor. The same thing with other soft stem herbs like cilantro. You can use the whole plant, the whole leaf and stem. So to make sure that I get as much of the parsley flavor that I want in here without as many of the leaves as I might want, I'm going to use a couple of these stems, because then I'm going to get a really good punch of parsley. It's great if you're making a pesto. Even if it's a basil pesto, a little bit of fresh parsley, stem included, goes a long way to keeping your pesto very bright green. And it just kind of helps give you more nutrition and balance out the flavor of sometimes overly sweet basil. So it's not just basil, but parsley, as we kind of know, doesn't really have a whole lot of, if it's in with other stuff, it can be overwhelmed very easily in terms of flavor, unless you're making a parsley heavy item, which we are here, or like a tabbouleh, which is basically just all parsley ground up in a food processor. Very, very parsley heavy. So I'm going to cover up the stems so that they don't keep flying away as I chop them. And then I'm just going to add that into my batch here of chopped herbs to make sure I have that really good, strong flavor. But yeah, since you're going to blend it up into a sauce anyway, using the stems is a great way to use all of your money and to get a lot of extra flavor, if you're doing something like a pesto or a sauce or that. So that is enough chopped parsley for my batch of scampi. Garlic is the last thing that we need to prep. It calls for 4 cloves for a full batch, so I would use 2, but I'm going to use 3. I think I've mentioned how much I love garlic. It's crazy how much I love garlic. So we're going to put in a bunch, and that is a personal thing, although if you're eating shrimp scampi, I hope you like garlic, because that's kind of the whole point. I like to cut off the little root stem end first. Even if it doesn't come off all the way, I just sort of give it that head start, because I'm going to remove that in the end. And then I'm going to squash it with the flat side of my knife, each clove. And then the peel just comes right off, and the root end comes right off with it, because we've already cut it. All just comes out of its little jacket, which is awesome. I have been cooking a long time in my life before I found out that trick. I don't know if people in my family just wanted me to suffer or if they didn't know, but it wasn't until I was almost a teenager and I saw it on TV, and it changed my life. So, there you go. Oh, I missed a little bit there. I really don't like that woody stem end. It's not fun to chew on. So after that, I'm just going to finely mince the garlic. If you have a garlic press, you can use that, but just try to make sure that you're scraping the inside out and repressing it, because a lot of times you waste a lot of garlic with the garlic press. It doesn't always all get pressed through. So I tend to just chop it up. I keep my fingertips safely out of the way in my claw formation. Tip of the knife on the board, much easier and safer that way, to just go up and down in a rocking motion. As I get closer to my fingers, I go very slowly and make sure that I'm not chopping my fingertips off. Always looking at what I'm doing when I have a knife in my hands and I'm chopping things. And then as I've gotten it all just sliced, the initial cross slice, I just go back through all those little slices and chop, chop, chop like you did with the herbs. Keep bringing it back into the middle, hand for safety and guidance on top. Chop, chop, chop. I use the knife often to just kind of bring it back in, but you will have to scrape down the sides of the knife as you go, or else those bits don't ever get really chopped down anymore. And you want them all to be very, very, very small. We're looking for a fine mince for this so that it really spreads out in the butter oil, and this is the whole flavor for our dish. We want to just make sure that it's well balanced and not like rough chunks when we go to eat it later. So very finely minced. If you have the kind in a jar, that is fine enough, usually. If you have like a food processor, you can do large batches of raw garlic for the week if you use a lot of garlic, and keep it in the fridge in an airtight container, and it'll last for, you know, a good 4 to 5 days in your fridge, just chopped garlic ready to go. That's very easy to do if you have a food processor, although don't do it in huge quantities. It tends to kind of get a little, how should I put it, slimy? I don't know. It's just not really the right texture, because a lot of the oils and the garlic start to come out. So small batches at a time, but you can do it in a food processor and make your own like jars of chopped garlic. That's great. So this is very finely minced and it's evenly minced. So I don't see any pieces that are like much bigger than the others. They're all nice and very well chopped. That's what we're going for with that. I'm going to set these things aside. We are done. Let me just double check. Yeah, we're done chopping things. And we are basically right now already at the fire it up and cook it all off process. Start of the game, I mean. I'm using my cast iron, as always. I love it, and it gets me a really good, consistent heat. So I want to turn it on to a medium heat. And I'm going to go for medium-high. I want to heat this up, and then I'm going to turn it to a medium. But I'm just going to get the pan hot for about a minute, and then I'm going to add in the extra virgin olive oil and butter. If you're doing the full batch, it's 2 tablespoons of both. Maybe it's okay that Amy's not here. We're eating a lot of butter tonight. But as she would always say, balance of everything is all right. So I'm going to be doing about a tablespoon, just because I'm splitting everything in half tonight. But 2 tablespoons of the butter, 2 tablespoons of the olive oil. You want to make sure that the butter really melts into it well. And then we're going to kind of get jamming here. The garlic goes in. Then the shrimp goes in. We got to cook that fully, flip it halfway through. All of our fun pepper flakes and our wine's going to go in to help deglaze after the garlic. Let me just make sure here I am on track. I'm going to turn the camera so that everyone can see what I'm doing. Okay. Back to medium. That's getting warm. I can feel it. I don't know if anyone has ever caught on that I keep, I think I've mentioned before, this is that rubber shelf paper, like drawer liners you can get in rolls at the 99-cent store. That's what I put underneath my cutting board, and it doesn't move around when I'm chopping and prepping and dicing, and my cutting board is nice and safe and securely held on the counter, and I can wash that with dish soap and water and reuse it, but also the rolls are 99 cents. So there you go. That's the really handy trick for keeping your cutting board safe. Yeah, okay. Butter, olive oil. You definitely want them to get warm and melt together. I forgot I was turning the camera around. That's the whole point of all of that. Okay. I need a new tripod, I think. Yep, here we go. Sorry, everybody. Not sure what's happening. I'm gonna keep doing this. All right, I'm not gonna touch it. Sorry if that's not perfect, but I hope that, yeah. Doing the best we can. I am gonna add my oil now, about a tablespoon. Gonna get hot pretty quickly because this pan has been on now for a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. I'm just gonna use my tongs. This is a trick for not wasting dishes, and because I use these as my fingers, I'm just gonna grab a tablespoon of the butter with the tongs. I don't have to get a whole nother spoon dirty. Get this melted. You want to mix it with the oil if your pan is hot like mine, just because the oil will help the butter not to start to burn. There we go. Pan is starting to kind of temper out. Now that that's all melted and nice together, we're just going to add the garlic and saute it until it's really nice and fragrant. At this point, my pan is low because I got it pretty hot. You want to keep it at around a medium or a medium low. You're trying to sweat out the garlic, not burn the garlic into little brown crispy pieces. You're trying to kind of keep it nice and sweaty, like it's just gotten translucent and tender. So I definitely want to screw this up. Very fragrant. I think I might add a little bit more oil just because I kind of want a little bit more of a drippy content here, just a touch. Yeah, just a little bit more liquidy, a little bit more lubrication. It's moving around, it's just kind of sweating down. It is getting a little teeny bit golden, and that's as much like browning as you want on the garlic. You want it to be very kind of fresh. Yeah, you can definitely just use all olive oil. Butter is fine to just leave it. It'll taste different, but it'll taste delicious. Not a problem there. I think that next we want to add in our wine, salt and pepper, and chili flakes. So the wine is about a quarter of a cup for me, about a half a cup for everybody else. Chili flakes is a quarter of a teaspoon, and I'm actually going to leave it that high for mine because I like mine spicy. This is how you can adjust yours to make it how you like it. Well, you can adjust everything to make it how you like it. That is the whole point of learning how to cook. Isn't that fun? So then I'm going to add in my salt and pepper. It's key here. This is the only time we're going to really season it. We'll taste it at the end to make sure, but a little bit of salt. If you like pepper, go for a fair amount of pepper in this. It's a really good additional component to these flavors that are already happening. And then mix that together just a little bit, kind of all aromatic and delicious. The wine has cooked off already about half. About half of what I poured in there has already evaporated, just steaming away here. It also helps that I'm using a big pan with a lot of surface area, so it's going to cook faster that way. But you don't want to crowd shrimp. And if you're using chicken or something else, you don't want to crowd that either. You want to kind of get a nice sear on every side. And if you're overcrowding your pan, then you're not going to get a nice sear. You're going to get a steamy interaction instead. Julia Child used to always be very emphatic about not crowding the mushrooms, and she made a terrible pun all the time, like, make sure you leave room for your mushrooms. And you think about that with anything that you're sauteing. Very cute. So we're going to add we're at a simmer. It's been simmering away now for a little bit. My pan has tempered out, so I'm going to make sure that I don't keep it too cold because I really do want to sear the shrimp. And the next thing is we're going to put in our shrimp. You want to definitely separate them out and try to get them in as even one layer as possible. If you don't want to just dump it in, that's probably a good idea because it's hot and it might splash. So you can kind of gently place some of your shrimp into the pan, spread it around. Definitely try to get everything with its own area, because after you've put it down, you don't really want to move it. You don't want to stir it. You don't want to flip it until it's ready, or you're not going to get like that nice sear on one side. Definitely not the end of the world if you don't get a nice sear on the shrimp for scampi. That's not the point necessarily, but it adds a lot of really good flavor. It makes the shrimp taste like better shrimp. Toss it around. If you are doing a really large batch, you might need to do it in 2 rounds, or just kind of get them in there and make sure you can get one side well seared, and then after that, just kind of stir it up. Not as important maybe to get both sides. I'm going to leave it on that one side so they all get kind of, well, as browned as possible, if possible. There's a lot of water in shrimp itself. Even if you have rinsed it and patted it dry, which I recommend doing, there's just water in it. It's a sea creature. So I think that it's got a hefty water content, and it tends to release that quickly, but then it kind of evaporates quickly too. So if you kind of leave everything alone, it will build up a little bit of a caramelized effect on that one side, especially with that good, like, I don't want to call it reduced, but after we put in the wine and cooked everything down some more, the garlic, it absorbs all of that. It helps to absorb some of the liquid, and it becomes thicker, like more of a sauce, like a pasty substance with the combination of the butter and the garlic and the reduced wine. And you could always add a touch of flour at that point if you want like a thicker sauce. You could mix that a tiny bit in, but not traditional. I am gonna, they're kind of still moving around, nothing sticking. It doesn't take long to cook shrimp though, especially depending on the size that you get. So you don't want to overdo it. I'm going to start flipping them because it is really just about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Well, about 2 minutes on each side. I think 6 minutes total might be a lot for a certain size of shrimp. Unless you are using the extra jumbo, the really, really big boys, then you're going to need the extra time to cook them all the way through. You do not want to serve this raw or underdone. The safe cooking temperature for most seafood, shellfish, is 145, I think. I will double check that and make sure, and if I'm wrong, I will let you all know in the next email. But I think 145 internal temperature is safe, depending on the source and the shellfish. Yeah, I think chicken's 165, ground meats are 155, shellfish 145, steaks starting at 135 and below, I think. Although I could be mistaken, and the shellfish is up with the ground meats at 155. I'm having a moment. I'm very sorry. I normally know these very well. I will double check if I'm wrong. But the most key thing you're looking for is that really nice cooked pink. It's opaque. It is no longer that kind of bluish, grayish, translucent-ish stuff that happens with shrimp. It's all starting to curl up and get nice and tight. If you were to poke it, it's firm and it bounces right back to your touch. And that is as cooked as the shrimp wants to get. So at this point, I'm going to turn my heat down again. Keep it kind of at this area. I don't want it to get too high or too low. We're going to stir in our parsley and our lemon juice and then serve it over the pasta. That is the entire dish. It's super simple. I'm going to get a bowl ready because that is part of the service. I definitely want to make sure that I'm ready for that step. I'm going to just put my pasta, or some of my pasta, on this platter instead, and just kind of lay it out. Sometimes thinking about using a platter instead of a bowl, depending on what you're serving. But this isn't a very drip-droppy pasta, so a platter is kind of nice. Think about platters for salads too. If you're ever serving, well, even if it's to yourself, just because it makes it visually beautiful. I'm gonna try to take the seeds out, but it doesn't matter. Here we go. A little bar juicer. The recipe says for the juice of half a lemon. I'm gonna do an entire half of lemon, even though I kind of cut other things in half. I like a really lemony scampi. It makes the garlic taste fresher. It makes everything taste a little bit sharper and brighter. It brings out the spiciness in the pepper flakes. It also depends on the size of your lemon. If you have small lemons, then use the whole thing. This is a very large lemon. Goes down the garbage disposal. I love that smell. And then all of that delicious parsley that we chopped up. I get that in there. You don't want to cook it much longer though once you've got the parsley in, or else it will, if you overcook it and just leave it on the heat, it'll turn blackish. And that is just not very visually appealing. It'll taste fine, but it won't look very good. So my pan is off now. The lemon juice is going to still reduce a little bit, but it's going to be good to have a little bit of that liquid in here. I don't know, I know the camera is a little bit far away, but I'm going to lift it up. The sauce is kind of not really even a sauce. It's definitely like a thick, I don't know how to, it's just all kind of condensed and reduced into the little bits of stuff. There is a bit of a drip to it, but not really. It's more of like a glaze. That's the word I've been looking for the last 20 minutes. So that's kind of the consistency that you're looking for in the end, a little bit more like glazy liquid content, and then all of the delicious flavor and bits. So I'm going to now transition to a different tool, because it's really important to get all of this out of the pan. All of that love that we just created is all of the flavor. Let me go back here. I don't want to risk moving the camera, actually. I'm going to do this. Just a bed of pasta. The pasta is not the main star here. The scampi is the hot shot tonight. We want to give the diva her glory. I'm just going to pour this out onto the pasta carefully. Pan is very heavy. Kind of not putting all the sauce out yet because I do want to evenly distribute that over my pasta. So I kind of first want to readjust, get the shrimp where I want it, make it really pretty. Spread this all out. And then I really want to get all of that garlic, all of that parsley, all of the condensed flavor. Scrape all of it to the edge where it's going to be easy to pour out. Yeah. Very hot pan. Here's a little trick. There's that handle on the side of your cast iron pan. A lot of pans have that. Use the tongs, and you can use it as a extra hand, even though it's hot. You just let that all drizzle and drip and coat all of that pasta and the shrimp. There's still a little bit in there, though. I'm not going to let that go. That's the whole work, all that love. And that is it, you guys. Like, one of the most straightforward, but like packed with flavor dishes that you can make for yourself and or your family. And it is just, yep, really simple. If you were doing the veggies, you would saute them for a much shorter amount of time, just because depending on what they are, they might not take that long to cook. And if you're using the squashes and the mushrooms, I recommend you start with the mushrooms. Make sure that you leave room. Spread them out and don't overcrowd them. And then after they have kind of reduced their water, because mushrooms let out a lot of water when you're sauteing them, what usually happens is it lets it out and then absorbs a lot of it back in, and the rest kind of evaporates. Once most of the mushroom water has cooked off and the mushrooms are more than halfway sauteed, then throw in your squash too, because that is not going to take very long at a good high saute. It's very watery. So that's what I would recommend if you were doing the veggie version, but I would do the same thing. Start with the olive oil and butter if you use it, and then garlic, chili flakes, wine, parsley, all of that the same process, but just sauteing mushrooms and squash instead. And if you're doing different kinds of veggies, that would be delicious. I think broccoli would be really yummy with this flavor profile. And that would need to be blanched first, just because it's a much more fibrous stem, and while even the florets can be pretty durable. So you want to blanch that in boiling water for just like a minute until it's kind of halfway cooked. And then when you saute it, it will saute up very quickly with your garlic and sauces and flavors. That would be really nice with the scampi. If you're doing chicken, especially white meat, cook it fast, and so have it diced into kind of a larger chunk in advance, and then cook it the same way. Just like when I put in the shrimp, you would be putting in chicken. Let it sear. Don't move it around too much on the pan. Let it sear on one side, and then start to stir it up so that you get at least one good side with a caramelized sear on it. And then you're going with the same process as long as it's cooked through. And chicken, much more importantly, to even cook it longer as needed. Chicken breast, white meat cooks faster. Boneless, skinless chicken breast will cook faster than boneless, skinless chicken thigh. But the thigh has more flavor because of the fat content. It's just a more flavorful muscle of the bird. So some alternatives there that would be fantastic as options. Even if you do eat shrimp, once you've gotten the scampi part down and you kind of know how to make this, try it with broccoli, try it with chicken, try it with something else, and you're not eating the same thing all the time. You can kind of mix it up each week. Also, depending on what you find at the store. That really goes a long way to what you decide to make. Now that this has cooled down for just a heartbeat, I'm going to put my lemon zest on it. If I put it on while it was still the hottest point was right on the surface, then the lemon zest can, well, it can just kind of wilt and disappear into the food. You don't see it as much. It's not quite as bright and beautiful, and I want to see it for our photos. And so that's the finishing touch. Nice, really bright, fresh, extra garlic, extra lemon, shrimp scampi. Where's the lens? There it is. Over a bed of simple pasta. I definitely recommend this dish with bread. I just get like a crusty loaf of bread, make the shrimp, and then kind of scoop it up. There's no fork involved. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend that method. It's really good. There's a restaurant in Venice that used to be a hole in the wall and a mini wall, and now it's a big place called Killer Shrimp. And I don't know if it's changed much, but 25 years ago, there were like 4 things on the menu. The bowl of shrimp, and you could get it with bread, rice, or pasta. Heaven, 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 delicious food. What is the cool extra long spirally pasta called? That is an excellent question. This is called, I mean the brand, Feltra is the brand. That is, fusilli con buco. No, that, I don't know what that means. You know, it doesn't seem to have a specific name of the, I think it, you know, it's just like spiral or corkscrew, but just really long. That's funny. I'll have to look it up, and I'll let you know that as well as the proper cooking temperature for the shrimp, to just double check my knowledge. Anyway, that is the label and the name from Italy. Feltra, A-F-E-L-T-R-A. And then on top it says C-A-V, period, Olimpio a Feltra from Napoli. I don't know. It's fun. It is fun. I always just tend to buy things off of like the way that it looks, and if it looks fun to eat and fun to experience. It's like getting wine based on the label. You never know if it's really going to turn out, but then this I recommend. I will recommend it better once I look up the name. But that's a fun question. Any other questions? Not yet. Well, if there is anything that anyone thinks of, we are a whopping 15 minutes early, so I'm not going to run you off. But that's it for the cooking demonstration, shrimp scampi, like that. Even if you needed to cook the pasta at the same time, it would be done at the same time. So you can have a really quick, really nice weeknight meal, very delicious. As I said at the beginning, next week is our last week for now. We will have some summer programming, so stay tuned to our Instagram page and our website for updates, because we'll post on both of those things as soon as we know what days we're going to start and what programs we're going to offer. If anybody has anything that they really would love, what I would love to continue working on over the summer is some of the kids' workshops, because I know those families need fun things to do, and baking and kind of a meal prep class. But if there's anything else that you guys are really desperate to learn and we have a consensus, then we could maybe come up with a workshop. Or if it's this class and you just really want to keep going with this kind of general idea, then that helps me a lot in terms of what we might end up finalizing on in terms of our summer plans. Obviously, everything is still up in the air for fall. I have no idea what to tell you on that. I have no idea what's going to be happening myself. I think it's kind of one day at a time these days. And there's a lot of really important stuff going on in the world. So these sessions can be fun and relaxing and great for us to come together and learn something valuable, but also just kind of spend some time. And yeah, based on from that, if there's anything anyone wants to say, even if it's not about cooking or food or shrimp scampi, please feel free. You can just unmute yourself. We're all friends here. But if not, then thank you for being here. A couple people have signed off already. I really appreciate everybody always checking in and spending their time. There's a lot of sirens and helicopters outside my apartment right now. Interesting. I'm going to unrecord though. I'm going to stop this.